Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren, and today we continue with the hazards of the old ones. Part 2, Chapter 14, the 11th daughter. And I guess I haven't been paying attention because we are hemming to the end of Part 2 of the book, the 11th daughter. Just we get through this chapter, which is also titled The 11th Daughter, and we are done with Part 2, and we move immediately to Part 3, The Shadow Tech Conspiracy. Woohoo! So, we are probably going to be doing 2 chapters today, because these are both pretty short, and as I said in this book, in my earlier books, I was wildly inconsistent with how long my chapters tended to be. Sometimes they were 25 pages long, sometimes they were, as in this case, 4 pages long. And then the one after that is also 4 pages long. So we'll finish chapter 14, be done with part 2. We move on to part 3, which is known as chapter 1, Destination Xandarr. Last week, we saw Lieutenant Kylos, or Madame Kylos, escape the hazards of the old ones and get into a mighty gunfight with Ellington and his lot. Ellington, of course, is the butler for Lord Milton, the old creepy guy who lives on the south lawn near the Duke of Olyn's manor. You thought I forgot about him? No, I forget nothing. And get a big shootout, and the Duke was using a variety of Los Capricos weapons. Normally, most League Lords only get 1 Los Capricos weapon. It depends on what household you're from. The House of Blanchford, Captain Davage uses the Karg, and that's it. Well, that's not quite true. But I don't want to give anything away. We'll get to that later. But technically, you only get 1 per house, or you can also use the Los Capricos weapons from your mother's side, also, whatever they happen to be. In this case, the Duke was doing it up with 4 different Los Capricos weapons, because he's a Duke. A Duke has fealty over 1 or more League houses, and that also gives him the right to use their Los Capricos weapons in turn. So the Duke was rocking up with his Fenister whip. It's an arcane whip that tends to find the head of whoever he's whipping and just lop it right off. That's the Fenister. He was also using the sap, and if you've listened to some of my other books, you've seen the sap before. It's like a piece of cloth that can follow the will of its user and harden up into a number of different shapes, usually swords and shields, things like that. Normally it just looks like a scarf that you're wearing around your neck, but you can take the sap and form it as you will. He was also using the red ha, which is a grenade-like weapon. You throw it and it opens up, and this length of tightly wound up wire uncoils, and in a cutting frenzy as it uncoils, all these sharp bits of wire come out and pretty much cube and sunder anything nearby. It's a pretty grotesque weapon, and that happens to be the Los Capricos weapon of House Milton. How convenient that was. And the final weapon he was using was the bazoo, which is a stick that you can take it and sort of trace a line of energy in the air, and then that line of energy shoots forward and cuts and sunders whatever it passes through before it dissipates. He was going to town with those Los Capricos weapons. And then finally the big angry Sisters of the Death Hand came out of the tunnels and cleaned up Ellington and his lot and dragged Ellington away to his whatever is happening to him. Probably not good things. And then at the very end of the chapter, Kylos sees that Carahil is alive and well, and good for him. So that's a load off our collective minds, I'm certain. So let's proceed immediately. Part 2, Chapter 14, The 11th Daughter, and that will mark the end of Part 2, The 11th Daughter, and we move on to Part 3. So let's begin. When the captain and the countess left the bridge, the black ship suddenly came to life. It changed course and headed for the Seeker with remarkable agility for such a big, unwieldy-looking ship. Helm, hard to port and make rotations for full substellar Mach, Lieutenant Verlin yelled. Sari spun the helm and the ship heeled around. The black ship turned to intercept. Several of the wing arrays at the forward part of the ship then reached out like a set of tentacles and slammed into the Seekers aft. One of them hit the rear hull and poured into the coil vents, clogging them. Engineering reports stellar Mach coils 3, 5, and 7 are down, Sassy yelled. The ship began a distinct list to port. Canister control. Fire a 4-shot burst amidships, set to maximum safe distance, Larson said. The canisters thudded away. 2 of them got picked off in mid-flight by the flailing black arms of the enemy ship. 2 detonated the enemy vessel right down the center. The black ship deformed for a moment, then righted itself, stretching back into shape, with no apparent damage. More black arms shot out and caught hold of the Seeker, pulling and squeezing it roughly. Everyone on the bridge could hear the superstructure groaning and complaining. Are we in battle shot range? Larson asked. No, sir. Can we pull away? Verlin shouted. The remaining coils are at max, and we must wind down. Another arm, moving fast. Boom. Ma'am, direct hit, frontal section, decks 5 and 6. We are venting, Sassy yelled. More arms, more impacts, more list. Calm, Verlin said, hanging onto the rail. Send as general. Prepare to abandon ship. I agree, Larson said. The door opened. Belay that, Captain Davage said as he strode back onto the bridge. Situation! Captain, we are in desperate shape, Verlin said. SM coils 3, 5, and 7 are choked and down. We are venting in frontal sections 5 and 6, and the enemy vessel has its grip tight. Have those sections been evacuated? Yes, sir, they have, Sassy said. Can we wind the remaining coils and break away? No, sir, we are at max and must wind down. Captain, Larson said, we have impacted the enemy vessel with no less than 2 direct canister hits with no apparent damage. Davage thought a moment. Stop the coils and power off all external lights. Additionally, counterflood to port. We should counterflood to starboard, Larson said. We'll be skirting with 0. Have faith. The orders went out, and a moment later the ship listed hard to port, the crew having to hold on to something as the Seeker's gravity didn't function in the perpendicular to the standard AM orientation. Davage took a moment to sight the dispensary. There he could see Sig in her usual bed. Davage had been the Seeker's captain for 16 years, yet Sig, in her relatively short time being on the vessel, had been confined to the dispensary many more times than he ever had, and she looked upset. How are you doing, darling? Is Ennis being good to you down there? She didn't answer. It wasn't like Sig, who was usually very chatty. Must be tired. Sir, the comm said, we have an incoming message. Fine, let's give ear. The holocone snapped on, and they were seeing into the dark, forbidding interior of the ship. Sitting there in a cramped, mirthless control area was the ghostly image of Princess Vroc of Xandarr, her blue bangs still in her face, her eyes glinting with triumph. Well, she said. So here we have the mighty Captain Davage. Invincible, they say. Unbeaten, they say. Unhittable. I cannot help but be somewhat disappointed. Davage adjusted his hat. I must say that is a novel ship you have out there. Shadowtech, if I'm not mistaken. I thought the Black Hats were very angry at House Xandarr. Marlith is dead, Captain. We are once again favored. She shifted in her seat. So how shall we do this, sir? Shall I pull your ship apart? Shall I crush it? Shall I just kill everyone on board and take the Seeker as a prize? What do you suggest? Davage glanced at Verlin. Lieutenant, can you hear my thoughts? Verlin looked at him. Yes, sir. Good. Send text to engineering. Wind engines for full reverse. Reverse? Do it now. My dear, I believe I told you I have no wish to fight. Yes, and I replied that I, on the other hand, most certainly wish to fight you. And here we are, in our first and last battle. I had been expecting more. Do you wish to beg for terms? Terms? No terms. If I am to die, I wish all here to die with me. Vroc looked a bit confused. Really, I'd expected a bit more nobility from you, Father. You are no doubt trying to confuse me. Father? Davage was puzzled. Pardon? Vroc looked at him hard and blinked. No, you're not my father, are you? You're Captain Davage. Yes, you're Captain Davage. You're on the Seeker. How's your Countess? In poor shape, down in the dispensary. That was quite a jolt you put to her. Not acting a little strange, is she? Let me look and see how she's doing. Davage lit his sight and pretended to look down into the dispensary. Instead, he looked the black ship over. His sight penetrated the layers of concentrated shadowtech, and he was amazed that there was so much that there was enough to make several Dark Man totems. Finally, deep within the fourth to last segment, he saw Vroc sitting in her cramped control room, hidden. Scattered in other segments were a few Zaffin crew members, also sitting at black controls. He also thought he saw a prisoner confined in the forward part of the ship. Damn, that complicated things. Lieutenant Verlin, when we reverse, I want a 17-degree roll to starboard. Text that to the helm. Also, send to canister control in all battleshot batteries. I want the forward part of the ship untouched. There are prisoners located there. Understand? Aye, sir. Davage adjusted his hat. She seems in weather shape. Vroc blinked and looked lost for a moment. Her image floated into the holocone. Sir, engineering reports engines wound for full reverse, came Lieutenant Verlin. Aye, be ready for my command, and do not forget, spare the forward section. Princess Vroc shook her head and smiled. I'm not purchasing your goods you're trying to sell me, Captain, she said. Seems to me you're trying to bait for time. It won't work. You have moments left to live. Seems to me your father, the King of Xandarr, wants me alive. There's money to be made. My father? Her eyes went glassy, her bent face once again distant and confused. Clearly, Vroc was struggling with her sanity. May I sit at the table today, Father? May I eat with you today? She asked. Davage thought a moment. Certainly, we have prepared your favorite. Vroc's head dipped, and then she clawed at her blue hair. Don't lie to me, Father. All I wanted was to sit at the table and eat my fill, and you never let me. You kept me locked in my room like a dog. I'm not a dog. I didn't ask to be your damned 11th daughter. Vroc put her face into her hands and sobbed bitterly. Davage couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for her. A crabby pair of gloved hands slithered into the cone and squirted her in the face with a thick-looking pinkish spray. A moment later, Vroc seemed to recover, her brief spin with raving insanity subverted. And now, Captain, where were we? Oh, yes. Since you have fallen well short, I shall simply find another League hero to fight. The Duke of Olyn, perhaps. I'd heard he captured himself a black cat. What was her name? She leaned over her console to look something up. Davage saw his moment. Now, Lieutenant, full reverse. The coil screamed, and the Seeker rocketed back in the direction of the enemy vessel, the grasping tendrils holding the ship, not expecting a sudden reverse movement. The helm rolled, the thrusters ticked, whipping the head of the Seeker around. Surprised, Vroc rapidly worked her controls. "You wish to take this vessel to kill its crew," Davage said. "No provocation, no parley. To kill me, to kill my wife? This matter is at hand, Princess, and this contest begins afresh, and I certainly hope you know what you've gotten yourself into, though I question your sanity." The Seeker, heeling around, slammed into the side of the black ship with a splash of metal and shadow tech. The two ships, locked together, did a waltz over Heron 7 for a moment. "Port battleshot batteries, open fire and hold." The battleshot batteries opened up, and the whole ship vibrated. The black ship, in a hail of explosive shot, puckered and deformed, the shadow tech cringing and temporarily vaporizing. It screamed out a mental note that crashed into their brains. Some put their hands to their heads to attempt to drown out the noise. Davage sighted. He saw Vroc's control room under heavy fire, walls collapsing, opening to space. Vroc, though, was not there. After a moment, the black ship broke in two near its aft quarter, with one piece being extremely long and the other rather short and stubby. The forward part of the ship, where the prisoner was being held, appeared to be sound. "Captain," Larson yelled, "battleshot batteries overheating." "We're free, Captain," Verlin said. "Cease fire, and all ahead full." The Seeker blistered away from the bubbling, churning ship, the two blasted pieces nudging against each other randomly in the Seeker's expanding gas wash. Davage ran to the helm and grabbed the wheel, sorry, giving it up as usual to the captain. "Engineering," he said. "Counter flood to starboard and null the wheel. And what is our coil status?" Mapes' voice came back from engineering. "3 coils down. Stellar Mach still available, though not recommended." "Stand by," Davage said. He rolled the wheel and turned the nose of the Seeker back to the black ship. Sight. Several reaching tendrils. He yanked the wheel and the ship rolled out of the way. "Canister control set pattern gamma gamma tau and allow for maximum spread. Go now." 5 canisters shot out of the Seeker towards the flailing pieces of the black ship. The tendrils reached out and tried to grab them, and all 5 exploded. Not a usual simple detonation. The canisters instead burst outwards in a rapidly expanding arc. 5 glowing circles of energized charged gas and plasma. The circles surrounded the ship, not destroying, but deforming and flattening it, stretching it, mangling the shadow tech like thin piece of copper wire. Davage hauled the Seeker around. "Starboard battleshot batteries, open fire." With the usual brrrr, the battleshot raked the ship. Davage sighted and saw the barrage had torn open a segment, spilling a portion of the sparse, struggling crew to cold space. "Lieutenant Verlin, I need the sisters here immediately to mop all this up." Davage swung the ship back around. To his horror, he saw 10 of the remaining wing segments on the larger piece separate into individual units and come swinging around with great agility. Like a squadron of fighter craft, they attacked in mass. "All ahead full," Davage cried. "Sir, coils at maximum." He cursed under his breath. Those missing coils were problematic. He turned to Sari, who was standing behind him. "I want a 72 degrees nose up." She began flipping levers, and Davage wrenched the ship upward towards high noon. The trailing ships followed. Sight. A blast of black spheres. He yawed the wings as a huge but fairly slow-moving cluster of ugly black spheres bubbled out of the lead ship. The spears came forward in a large group, bouncing up into each other, expanding and changing. Davage could see that they seethed with deadly energy. Fortunately, it wasn't difficult to avoid them with his fast, maneuverable ship. "Lieutenant Larson," Davage said, "I want full canister barrage set to—" The lift door to the bridge opened. Sig came marching out. "Dav," she said. "Countess, I ordered you to the dispensary," he said, spinning the wheel again. But you're not in the dispensary. He had no time for this. Come on, Sig, please. Go to the dispensary and rest, will you? For me, please. Sig looked at him. Came back. Took off her Blanchford gown and let it fall to her ankles. She kicked it away. Countess? Davage said, looking at her naked body. He sighed. Claws. Black claws.
How can I kill you if I'm in the dispensary?
Sig shouted, lunging at him, black claws growing out of her fingers. And with that, we conclude Part 2, Chapter 14, The 11th Daughter, and we conclude Part 2, also The 11th Daughter. Brief battle in space, pitting the Seeker against the Black Hat's Shadow Tech ship captained by Princess Vroc of Xandarr. In case you're wondering, a canister, I used to, in the early days of League of Elder books, most of the League ships fired canisters. They're basically a guided missile that the ships would launch, and you could program them to do a variety of effects. They supposedly used Elder tech for their warheads, so they could go from just small explosions to things that were huge, very nuclear in scope and beyond. Canisters were very powerful, and with them, if you had enough of them, you could do a lot. Blow out a star if you wanted to, if you had enough canisters and the warheads were all set to the proper configuration. I kind of got away from canisters in later books. The Lady Brana of the House of Champion, who is one of those League's lead scientists, came up with the SAR beam, which I guess is similar basically to a phaser beam or any sort of energy type weapon that you see in science fiction shows that ships have. The SAR beam used a very large thermoplant, so only larger ships could use it, but the SAR beam sort of replaced the canister as the primary weapon of the fleet, although the Seeker doesn't have a big enough thermal plant to run canisters. That would come later with the New Faith variants of ships that were mostly armed with SAR beams. Captain Davage always liked his canister weapons, that he could set them however he wanted and just go to town, basically. So this book here, The Hazards, is the last hurrah for the canisters. You never really see them again. So that was fun, but we move on. And then apparently something's wrong with Sig, as Sig is trying to kill Captain Davage right now. Not fun indeed, and especially right during a middle of a space battle. That's very, very inconvenient. But we move on. Chapter 3, or Part 3, and this is the final part of the book, and it's the largest part of the book. The Shadowtech Conspiracy. And the first chapter is Chapter 1, Destination Xandarr. So, I see no reason to not proceed immediately. Let's get this done. Again, Destination Xandarr is only 4 pages. It's teeny weeny. And then the one after that is how long? It's 5 pages. So I was going to town on these little tiny chapters. I don't know what's wrong with me. But I think by the time we're done with these 4 pages, this video will be long enough. So we'll do the other one next week. So let's do this. Destination Xandarr. Kai threw her arms around Carahil, who was sitting in a large cargo bay, his silver light filling it. His whiskers twitched with happiness. Kai pulled back and framed his face with her hands. What the hell happened? The sisters ripped you apart. I saw it. I heard it. Good creation. It was horrible. Not totally, as you can see. I still had a spark of life in me when you put the jewel in my mouth. You did well, Kai. I'm very proud of you. You scared me to death, you big lug. I'm sorry, but it all worked out as I hoped. Even poor Ellington took the fall for you. At this moment, he's being whisked into the heart where I'm afraid horrible things will soon be happening to him. Such is the price for being greedy, I suppose. Kai thought about the poor man's fate and shuddered. I can still hear his cries, Carahil. I know, Kai. I know. She wiped her nose. You lost your book. Thanks for the help in there. Carahil's book appeared in a flash. You mean this one? I didn't lose it. You could have had something a little more dangerous come out of that book to help me than a pie. A pie? Really? Seemed effective to me, and nobody got hurt, which is good. They kept mentioning P3847. What's that? That's the Brightstone you took. They have them all numbered. They're not too happy down there and will probably never stop searching for it. It's okay. Let me worry about that. Everything worked out. The Duke and Tori Jane, hand in hand, entered the bay. Well, we are cruising high and fast, safe under cloak. Now, where shall I take the lovely Madame Kylos here? It's just Kylos, sir, please, and I'm not an old maid, not yet anyway. The Duke tipped his hat. Carahil shuffled his whiskers. Xandarr, Duke. We would like to go to Xandarr right away, please. Xandarr, the Duke and Kylos repeated in unison. Xandarr? The planet Xandarr in Zaffin space? The same? I am not aware of any other. The Duke pulled his pipe out of his mouth. Creature. His name is Carahil, Kai said proudly. All right, Carahil. I promised I would pick the lovely lady up here and then take her to a remote location. Well, indeed. And the remote location in this case happens to be the planet Xandarr. Why am I going to Xandarr, Carahil? Kai asked. The Duke shook his head. It's out of the question. The fleet is probably in the area. They rotate over in that direction around this time of the month to cover the kills. We'd have to run them and possibly be boarded. It's simply too dangerous. And so, you're a League citizen, and you're not running contraband this time, just passengers. True. Ferrying passengers in a fleet of illegal armed yachts, which additionally have no taxes paid and fly no flag. Why didn't you pay your taxes, Duke? And what should I tell the tax collector, sir? And here we have a fleet of illegal vessels, armed, packing Zaffin tech and forbidden scanners right out of Ming Moreland. So, shall I pay my taxes before or after I return from prison? Carahil shrugged. Such is the risk you run being a pirate. So, back to the planet Xandarr. It's alleged pirates, sir, and we're not going to Xandarr. Are you going to renege on your promise, Duke? I thought you had turned a new leaf in the influence of your lady here. I am grateful for what you did for me, for us. I can't now imagine being without my Tori, and you were right about that too. But, as incarceration is not something I crave, I am not going to Xandarr. Pick another place, preferably one not so crawling with fleet activity. But we have our hearts set on Xandarr, Duke. What's the matter? What are you not telling me? The Duke hesitated. I have recently received a number of messages warning me not to go to Xandarr. They said the planet is cursed, that bad things are soon to happen there, and I frankly want no part of it. You always do what you're told, Duke? The Duke laughed and put his pipe back in. That might have worked on me a few weeks ago, but not now. We're not going to Xandarr. Pick another place. I'll not endanger Tori. Besides, beyond the sinister messages, I have heard something big is going to happen on Xandarr soon. Best to leave it be for a while. Something really big is going to happen, Tori Jane said. The Black Hats have painted half the planet, though I was never told why. Tori threw her arms around the Duke and gave him a big kiss. Kai rolled her eyes. Tori, I'm going to have to introduce you to a friend of mine. She acts all sappy just like you do. I've told Sig 1,000 times. Tori was puzzled. Pardon me? Who? Sig, the Countess of Blanchford. She's also an ex-Black Hat. Hates shoes. Really? Tori said, interested. What's her name again? Her full name? Countess Sigillus of Blanchford, formerly of Metatron. Tori Jane's smile vanished. Sigillus of Metatron. Really? You mean to say Sigillus of Metatron lives? Yes, she's a good friend of mine. Tori stood up. Excuse me, she said, walking away. They watched her walk off. Carahil continued. Think of it as a reunion of sorts. The sight of your first date. That's not funny, the Duke said. Carahil smiled. Not intended to be funny. I need you to take me and Kylos to Xandarr. Immediately. Tori Jane, sitting at the cockpit, spoke up. Aw, come on, Fall. It'll be fun. What's the big deal? Besides, we'll be under cloak the whole time. If the fleet is out there, they won't find us. Maybe we'll get to see Sigillus of Metatron. Maybe I'll get to say hello. Tori sounded a bit ominous. The Duke puffed his pipe and thought a moment. Tori, you don't sound too happy. I'm fine. Think of Sigillus as my version of Lord Milton. We have a special relationship. You mean you want to kill her, right? Well, killing her is a good start. Come on, let's go. I want to do this. Nobody will find us under cloak. The Duke thought a moment. Very well. The planet Xandarr. Tori, will you please send word to Peter? Yep. Carahil thought a moment. Oh, Duke, on the way to Xandarr, we'll need to make a quick stop or two. Nothing too far out of the way, nothing dangerous, I assure you. The Duke sighed. Well, this just keeps getting better and better, Carahil, he said. Where are we going? I'll tell you when we're near. The Duke stood and left, joining Tori in the cockpit. Carahil nudged Kai. How are you feeling? Well, terrible. I want to sleep, but I can't close my eyes. I see them in the dark. The sisters. You mean you see the sisters? Yes. Close your eyes, Kai. I don't want to close my eyes. I'll see them again. Kai looked down and fumbled with her hands. I'm scared. I guess I don't mind telling you that since you probably already know. Well, don't be. I'm here. Kai felt the inevitable hand of sleep reaching out for her. She tried to stave sleep off. The Wummalar. They kept saying the word Wummalar. What's it mean? A Wummalar is a mythical beast that the sisters believe in. Essentially, the Wummalar is a creature that will break through the sisters' line of defenses and steal all their secrets. A creature they dread, fear. The day the Wummalar comes, so say the sisters, that is the day of the apocalypse. The last day of the League. Carahil leaned down and nuzzled on her cheek. But, in modern terms, Wummalar is just anything that frightens a sister, so I suppose that you, Kai, are a Wummalar in a manner of speaking. Enough bedtime stories. Go to sleep. Rest. She closed her eyes. Green-skinned giant sisters leering, reaching out for her.
We will never stop searching for you, Johnny.
Kai grimaced. I see them, Carahil. I hear them. They're speaking to me even now. Nobody is speaking to you. You're safe. It's just your imagination. Close your eyes, Kai, and rest. You'll see no specters, and you'll hear no voices, I promise. And when you wake, you'll remember little of what took place in the hazards. I swear it. All the things you saw and discovered will be gone. Immortality? Shh. That too. I'm really scared, Carahil. I know, but I am here, and thanks to you, and I will protect you. I will guard over you as you sleep. I'm not going anywhere. She settled back with Tweeter sitting on her shoulder. You, drew a picture of me in your book, Carahil. I liked it. His book appeared and he spun it around, opening to the sketch. You mean this one? He asked. Yes, she said, becoming drowsy. Well, once this is over, I'll frame it and give it to you. Sleep now. She closed her eyes, seeing Carahil's smiling silver form looking down on her. She saw no monsters. She heard no voices. She slept. And with that, we conclude Part 3, Chapter 1, Destination Xandarr. So, the plot thickens. Carahil, calling in a favor that the Duke owed him, had him pick Kai up at the hazards of the Old Ones, and the favor isn't over. Now he wants the Duke to take both he and Kai to Xandarr. Now, Xandarr, fairly dangerous place. It's in Zaffin space, although it's right on the edge of the League border. It tends to draw a lot of fleet traffic. There's a lot of patrols in that area because Xandarr used to be the base of Princess Marlis of Xandarr, and a lot of attacks on the League originated at Xandarr. So the fleet tends to have a presence there. And the Duke, being a sketchy sort, doing sketchy things and winning sketchy prizes, doesn't really want to deal with the fleet too much. Tori talks him into it. And apparently, Tori has beef with Sig. The Black Hats aren't one big happy family. You have different Black Hats and different dealings with other Black Hats, and sometimes those dealings don't go well, especially when one Black Hat is a painter like Tori is and the other is a hammer like Sig. They tend not to get along. And apparently Sig and Tori in their long lives had beef with each other. Sig and Tori really don't like each other much. They really can't stand each other, frankly. This rivalry, this conflict between them stretches off into other books, and they continue it on later, and you'll see more of that as we continue. So the Duke is on his way to Xandarr, and Carahil wants to make a quick pit stop first along the way. I wonder where he wants to stop. We will find out next week. Part 3, Chapter 2, You Have Murdered Your Countess is the name of that chapter. Sounds good to me. And it's only 5 pages long, so we'll probably be moving on to the chapter after that, which is called Sigillus. And that one is also only a few chapters long, so I guess I was in a short chapter mode at this point. In any event, we will get to that next week. Until then, this is Ren Presents. I am your host, Ren. Peace out.